everybody. Happy Friday. Welcome to the Sales Hacker Podcast. Welcome to Friday Fundamentals. It's Sam Jacobs. I'm the founder of Revenue Collective, and I am the host of this podcast, as you know, and as is self-evident. Now, Friday Fundamentals is that quick 5 to 10 minute little one-question interview that we have for this week's guest, and this week's guest is Scott Armour, the Chief Revenue Officer at Nextiva. Scott has been leading, building, scaling sales organizations going all the way back to early days in Santa Barbara at IBM. And we're going to talk to him today about the difference between being a seller and an order taker. Now, before we do that, we want to thank our sponsor. Friday Fundamentals is brought to you by Outreach. Outreach triples the productivity of sales teams and empowers them to drive predictable and measurable revenue growth. By prioritizing the right activities and scaling customer engagement with intelligent automation, Outreach makes customer-facing teams more effective and improves visibility into what really drives results. And we hope that Nextiva is using Outreach, but we're not going to put him on the spot. What we are going to put him on the spot is, Scott, tell us about the difference between being a seller and an order taker, and why being a seller is so much more important than being an order taker.
Great question, Sam. And I'm going to start by inverting it and probably saying, why is it that people fall into being order takers? And it's because it looks easier. And initially it is. But why is it more valuable to be an actual seller versus an order taker? And the key difference here is really how you approach things. An order taker simply presents their offerings, gets told by the customer what the customer wants, is controlled by the customer, and then tries to go make that happen. Sellers are using their listening skills, and they're asking discovery questions, and they're truly doing a little more work up front to find a value, to find the right solution, to give what's best for the customer versus simply what the customer said they want. Now, a little more work up front, but yields much better results for the customer, more sustained results tactically as a seller. And then more importantly, if you look at the value, your value in the marketplace, true sellers always have value in the marketplace. Order takers will have value in a good market when orders are easy. So it's important to develop those selling skills, even though it's a little more work. It's like the gym, a little more work on the front end, better result on the back end, and selling's no different. What are some of the selling skills if I feel like I've been too much of an order taker, I'm too reactive to the customer, and I want to move into more of a value-based sales role? What are the things that I should do to make that transition for myself? Another great question. So one that I always focus with my team is listening to understand versus listening to respond. And if you think about it, it's a nuance, but it's a critical nuance. And so you need to just ask yourself, when you're having that customer discussion, which are you doing? If you're listening to respond, you're falling into being an order taker. If you're listening to understand, you're positioning yourself to be a seller. The other key approach is to be proactive versus reactive. And in my experience, that means having a plan, an account plan, a sales plan, a territory plan, a plan on how you're going to make your numbers versus hope as a strategy. So those are a few key skills, Sam, that I think anyone can kind of self-assess and then begin to make changes in those two areas. And I think they'll find themselves transitioning towards selling and adding more value to their customers and in their own portfolio. I love it. Listen to understand versus listen to respond. Probably that's just true, as with many sales lessons, it's true for all activities in life, not just sales, but it's a great lesson for sales. Scott, thanks so much for being on Friday Fundamentals. I think we mentioned it earlier this week on Tuesday on our first interview, but if folks want to reach out to you, they can either through the company website. Is it nextiva.com? Correct. And then otherwise it's on LinkedIn. Scott's Scott, as you would spell Scott, and then Armour, ARMOUR. And I think it says that you're based in the Las Vegas area, but that's really because you're near Zion in southern Utah and nobody knows where that is. Accurate? That is 100% accurate, but it is gorgeous. I believe you. I want to come visit. Scott, thanks so much for being on the show this week, and congrats on the success at Nextiva. And we can't wait to follow along and see what great things you all accomplish. Thanks, Sam.